Have you ever felt stuck in a routine that drains the life out of you? Like you're always rushing to work, to errands, to obligations, but never toward the life you actually want? Maybe you wake up tired, go to sleep even more exhausted, and somewhere in between, you start wondering if this is really how it's supposed to be. That was her. Wake up early, commute in silence, work 10 hours, come home to responsibilities, go to bed, only to do it all again. Her days blurred together like gray paint on a canvas that used to be full of color. People called her responsible, reliable, a hard worker, but inside, she felt like a machine, performing, pleasing, surviving, and worst of all, she didn't even remember the last time she felt like herself until one evening, something shifted. No one else saw it. There was no announcement, no breakdown, just a quiet decision made at her kitchen table, heart pounding, hands shaking, that would change everything. Not instantly, not dramatically, but completely. Her name was Julia, and if you asked anyone who knew her, they'd all say the same things. She's dependable, hardworking, always on time. She was the one who picked up the extra shifts, stayed late when no one else would, said yes, even when her body screamed, "Please no!" People respected her, but no one really saw her. Her mornings started in the dark, not poetic, golden hour kind of dark, just cold, heavy silence. Alarm clock, shower, coffee, train, desk. She moved through the motions like a ghost with a calendar. Meetings, deadlines, emails, lunch at her desk, another urgent request, another problem that was suddenly hers to fix. And when the day ended, she wasn't done. There were groceries to carry, dinner to cook, dishes to clean, bills to pay. She kept going because she thought she was supposed to. The truth? Julia didn't remember when she last felt rested. Not just physically, mentally. She couldn't tell you the last time she laughed without checking the clock. Her weekends disappeared into errands, her passions, forgotten somewhere between the back-to-back work calls and the late-night budgeting sessions. Even the things she once loved, painting, writing, walking in the park, now felt like distant memories from another life. And yet, she kept telling herself it was normal. Everyone's tired. That's just adulthood. It won't be like this forever. But deep down, something inside her was slowly going quiet, like a voice she used to trust, now whispering under the weight of responsibility. She had dreams once, not big, flashy ones, just real ones. A peaceful home, a job that meant something, time to breathe, time to live. But somewhere along the line, survival became the only goal. And without even noticing, she stopped asking herself what she wanted. She didn't have time for questions anymore, just obligations. Have you ever been so busy trying to hold everything together that you forget what you were building in the first place? That was Julia's life. Structured, predictable, exhausting. And from the outside, it looked like she had it all under control. But on the inside, she was fading. Quietly, slowly, almost invisibly. It wasn't a dramatic moment. There were no tears in the office bathroom, no shouting match, no one walking out. It was quieter than that, almost invisible. It happened on a Tuesday. Julia was on her lunch break, though break was a generous word. She sat at her desk, scrolling through her inbox with one hand, holding a half-eaten sandwich in the other. A coworker dropped another file on her desk without a word. Her phone buzzed again. Another client, another fire, another urgent task for someone else's to-do list. And then it hit her. Not like lightning, more like the slow realization that she had been living the same exact day for months. She looked around, fluorescent lights, papers, unread messages, buzzing phones. And suddenly it felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. Everyone was moving, talking, working. But she felt completely still. That's when she whispered it. Not to anyone, just to herself. I can't keep doing this. It wasn't a breakdown. It was a breakthrough. The kind of quiet collapse that doesn't show on the outside, but shakes everything on the inside. She didn't cry. She didn't stand up. She just sat there, stunned by the weight of how deeply unhappy she had become. Later that night, she sat at her kitchen table, dishes in the sink, her laptop still open from work, the hum of the refrigerator, the only sound in the room. And that's when she made the decision. No audience, no announcement. Just one thought she scribbled on a post-it note and stuck to her fridge. You're allowed to want something more. That was it. A single, quiet decision. She wouldn't quit tomorrow. She wouldn't change her whole life overnight. But the cycle had been broken. She had chosen herself, not loudly, but deeply. And sometimes, that's how real change begins. Nothing changed the next day. The office was still loud. The to-do list was still endless. Her body was still tired. But Julia had changed, just enough to notice. She started saying no to things that weren't hers to carry. Not out loud, not aggressively, just quietly, intentionally. She stopped apologizing for needing a break. She stopped jumping to fix every problem that wasn't hers. And little by little, the fog began to lift. She carved out 10 minutes every morning just for herself. Not for productivity, just to sit with her coffee. No phone, no emails, just her and the silence. It felt awkward at first, like she was wasting time. But eventually she realized those 10 minutes were the most honest part of her day. She started walking after work. No headphones, just movement, breath, air. She pulled out an old notebook she used to write in, and without forcing it, she began jotting down things she still wanted from life. Small things like visiting a quiet town by the sea, or learning how to cook a dish her grandmother used to make. For the first time in years, she wasn't just surviving. She was remembering how to live. People around her noticed. They couldn't quite explain it, but there was something different in her presence. She spoke more slowly. She listened with intention. She didn't rush to fill the silence like before. She wasn't trying to prove anything. She was simply there, present. And that presence, that quiet reclaiming of her own time, her own energy, her own soul, began to shift everything. Opportunities started showing up. Real conversations replaced empty ones. Even her work changed. She had boundaries now, not walls. Just gentle, powerful lines that said, "This is mine, and this is not." She hadn't burned her life down. She had simply started honoring it. And in doing so, the world around her responded. Julia didn't wake up one day with everything figured out. Her life didn't become a movie, but step by step she built something that felt more honest, more free, and more hers than anything she'd had before. From the outside, it looked simple, but on the inside, everything had changed. She had time now, time to breathe, time to wake up without dread, time to sit with her morning coffee and actually taste it. She began walking to work instead of rushing. She deleted emails that didn't matter. She said no without explaining. And that tiny shift, from obligation to intention, gave her something she hadn't felt in years: clarity. 6 months later, she left her job. Not for more money, not for status, but for peace. She found a company that respected boundaries. That didn't glorify burnout. That didn't expect her to be available 24/7. It wasn't glamorous, but it gave her space. And in that space, she remembered the parts of herself that had been buried for so long. She started painting again. Her small apartment began to feel like a sanctuary instead of a storage unit for stress. She took long walks on weekends, cooked meals without rushing, read books without guilt. She even booked a trip to that seaside town she had once written in her journal. Just her, the ocean, and the feeling of being alive in her own life again. And people noticed. Not because she talked about it, but because energy doesn't lie. Her eyes had more light, her voice had more pause. She didn't rush conversations. She didn't over-explain. She was calm, present, whole. Most of all, she had returned to herself. The version of her that wasn't built on performance, but on truth. And if you're still living that kind of routine, waking up tired, rushing through days that blur together, forgetting what it feels like to just exist, maybe it's time to ask, what quiet decision are you still avoiding? You don't have to burn your life down. You don't need permission. You just need one choice, made for you, by you, silently, powerfully, because that's how it begins. That's how it began for her. And it can begin for you too. Maybe it's time to ask yourself, what in your life is draining you without giving anything back? What tiny habits are stealing your energy, your peace, your identity, quietly, day by day? Real change doesn't start with a big leap. It begins with awareness. So, take 10 minutes today, just 10, and write down what makes you feel alive and what makes you feel numb. Don't rush it. Then pick one thing, just one, and ask, how can I begin to change this? You don't need a perfect plan. You need a starting point and the belief that your life doesn't have to stay the same. And if this story spoke to something deep inside you, don't stop here. On the left side of the screen, you will find the story of a person who spent much of her life facing many challenges and having to fight to improve her position at work, managing to overcome herself with the right dedication until the day she was finally recognized for her effort, and then she reached the top. Watch now. Her transformation can start with her or with you, here and now, just by dedicating yourself to what really matters.